So up to now, the only data we've passed into a template has been an int, a value of type int, and a value of type string. And by the way, I say a value of type just to be really clear with my language and try to be as specific as possible. And I find that being clear and specific with my language helps me understand the language, the programming language. And so thinking about I'm passing in a value of a type is a good way to think about things when you're doing Go programming, because Go is really about types. You create your own types and then you attach methods to those types, and you can have polymorphism and create an interface which is a type. So being clear with your language is good. All right, so up till now, we've only passed in a value of type int and a value of type string. So what we're going to do in this video, this lecture, is we're going to see how to pass in other data structures and composite data structures, so data structures that are composed of many pieces of data. These are also known as aggregate data structures. And we're going to pass in a composite data structure, and then we'll see how to range over all of the pieces of data in that composite data structure. So we're going to pass in a slice, we're going to pass in a map, we're going to pass in a struct, we're going to pass in a slice of structs, and we're going to pass in a struct that has a slice of structs. So we're going to see those. So the first one is passing in a slice. And here I have a slice of string. I'm using a composite literal. So composite literal is the type, curly braces, and then the values I'm passing in. And so I'm passing in a slice of string. And when I pass that in, the dot in my template will be the current piece of data that I passed in. That first dot, right, is the current piece of data I passed in. I could use range to range over that current piece of data. When I use range, I need to end the range. So you could go to the standard library text template, right? The package text template, and you could look, oh, how does range, where do you see range in there? And you can read it, but this is how you use it. So you use range over the current piece of data, and then I'm going to end that range. And what happens when I range over the current piece of data? Well, for every iteration of the loop inside this loop, right, inside that range loop, for every iteration, each iteration will be the current piece of data. And so that becomes the current piece of data. So Go is created by some of the same people who helped create Unix. And Unix has this pipelining concept where the output of one thing becomes the input of the next process. And so here the output of this becomes the input of that. And so the dot is the current piece of data. And the current piece of data here is the slice, but as I range over the slice, what becomes the current piece of data inside that range is an entry in the slice, an element in the slice. And so when I run this, we'll see each of the values printed out. And so I'm going to, first, I want to show you one thing. I'm at the root level of my project, Golang Web Dev. I'm going to do go funct dot // and that's going to format all of my code throughout this entire project. That's going to run for like 10 seconds because there's a ton of code. Cool. So all my code's been formatted, so I'm showing you well-formatted code. Now I'm going to change directories and go into 007, 01, 01, and go run main. Gandhi, MLK, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. So all those people came out. That's cool. And if I wanted to, I could use variables in my template. And so I could use range, and I could range over that current piece of data, which is a slice. And I could use a short declaration operator, and I could assign to any identifier. I'm calling mine index and element. I could assign the index and the element, right? So the value. So I'm going to clear this. Change directories into O2. Go run main. And so there I also have the index and the element. So you could use variables to range and get the index element. Same way with a map, right? So here's a map. And I'm using a composite literal. And I have the type and then I have the curly braces, and I populate it with the values. And so there are the different values. That's doing it. That's all commented out. I was having to pause there for a second. I'm like, why is that there twice? Right? And you could also do it right here, which is on one line, and I need my comma right there, like that. So there I'm doing it on many lines, like that. So I could do it either way. And then I pass that in, Sages, and I go and I look at my template. So the current piece of data is that map, and I'm now ranging over that map, and it's going to give me all the values and none of the keys. So I'm going to go up a level, and I'm at a variable, and go up one more, and then go into O2 map and O1, and go run. Let me clear this. Go run main. MLK, Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. Am I in the right place? I pass in Gandhi, MLK, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. Yeah. So here, same thing, but I'm asking for the key and the value. And so go up a level and come back down and go run main. And so this time I got the key and the value. MLK, Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. MLK, Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. That's kind of interesting. The values come out the same. Because in other Go programming, it doesn't, but in templates, it does. The next one is a struct. And so with a struct, I'm again using a composite literal. So there's the type. And the type is this with those fields. And then I populate those fields. And here I did it with the key. And then I pass that in. And so when I look at my template, the current piece of data is the struct, and I want this field. The current piece of data is the struct, and I want this field. So structs are kind of nice because you could access things by their field name. Change directory, and I want to go up a level, and then down into O3, and then O1. Go run main. Cool. And if I did the variable deal, just out of consistency, I could do that type of variable deal. Close all. And then a slice of struct. So here's the data that I'm passing in. I have sage. And so I'm going to create one sage, another sage, another sage, another sage, another sage. And then a slice of sage gives me sages, assigning that to that variable. And so there's my slice of sage. And so you could start to speculate, maybe even pause the video. What are you going to do with this piece of data when you get it? Well, you might range over your slice of sage. So the output of this becomes the input of that. The current piece of data is now a sage, which is a struct. And the struct has a field name. And the struct also has a field motto. And so I print those out. And so let's see that run. And that's O4, O1. Nope, there's no O1. Just go run main. There we go. And then the last one is going to be a struct slice struct. So if I look down at this, I've got sages and I have cars. And so then I create a struct and I assign it to data, and I have that struct is items right here. So that's that struct here, and it has a slice of sage and a slice of car. And so here I have a slice of sage and a slice of car, so I put that there and here, and then I pass that in. And so when I get that, I will have a struct, and each one of the fields in that struct are a slice, and each of those slices hold another struct. And so to get that data to come out, the current piece of data is a struct that comes in. So I could range over that field, which is a slice, right? Range over wisdom, this is a slice. Range over transport, that's a slice. And what's that slice hold? That slice holds, right, a sage, which is a struct, right? It holds a sage or it holds a car. So as I range over that, I get the fields of that struct. For each entry, it's a struct. And then I can print them out. So that runs, this looks like this. got those fields out. And here's a refactored version. I'm not quite sure what's in here. I haven't looked at this in a little bit. And let's see what's refactored about it. I've done this with my my struct right here. And so I've done a struct where, and so this so two things I want you to take away from this. One is it takes students a little bit of time sometimes to think about their data structure. What data do I want to pass in? What data structures do I want to use to pass it in? And then how do I access everything? And so I was showing you these examples so you could see, oh yeah, the current piece of data coming in is a slice. I range over that slice, and that's giving me a struct, right? And that struct has these fields, and so then I could access that. So you have to think about how do you want to pass your data in? And then when you go to your template, you have to think about what piece of data did I pass in and how do I access that data? So that takes students a little bit of time to wrap their head around. And I've got a bunch of hands-on examples down here where you're going to work with that. And I have the solutions to them, right? So I have a lot of examples, and we have more with composition where we're going to see how to do that. So that's a big piece, is just like, how do I structure my data into some sort of composite data type and then pass it in, then how do I access it? So we've got a lot of examples to help reinforce that. And then the second thing I wanted to say is, I don't know. Here's the second thing I wanted to say is sometimes students get confused by this notation right here. So let me just go to Golang Playground and show you how that works, okay? Golang Playground. And so we did that thing with the person type. So type person is a struct, and a person has f name, which is a string. And I know that you could do this all in one line. And then I format that, that's fine. And then I come down here and I type p1 is colon equal person. And that's I got to populate this. And then I have James. This would be Miss Moneypenny, but whatever. James Bond, and then I could print that person. So this is a lot more clear to most people what's going on there. Right? Like people see that, and if you've had some experience, you're like, okay, cool. And then sometimes the other way that it's done is that you could just take, instead of putting type person there, what is type person? Type person is all of this, right? So I'm just going to copy that. I'm copying it. And then I'll cut it. I'm cutting that. One little chunk out. And instead of referencing what a person is, I just put what a person is right there. Do you see that? And so now I have this structure where there's the type. This is a composite literal. There's the type. And here are the curly braces, and then I give it values. So instead of having it like that, and I don't know why, but this totally screws up at Golang Playground when you do the Control-Z deal. Right? Instead of having it like that, let me just make sure that's formatted. All right, cool. Instead of having it like that, where I say type person is a struct with these fields and then give me the composite literal person in this, I could just take the type out of there, and I call this an anonymous type, right? And I just put it right here and then format it. And that's a standard way to do it. It's not just Todd's way, right? So this is the type, and then here's, the curly braces. So that's the composite literal, the type, and then the curly braces. And so that was the refactor right here. Just doing that with it. And then passing that in. And that's something you often see right before a template's executed, is somebody just creating some sort of struct, some sort of type right here, anonymous type on the fly, and then using a composite literal. So there's the type, there are the curly braces, and giving it values and assigning it to an identifier like data, and then pass data in. That's something you often see. Like, let me get all my data together, pass it in, and then use it. All right. So that's passing data into templates, and it is one of the places where students are often challenged and need some practice. And so we have that practice coming up for you if you need some reinforcement with how do you do that. But before we do those practices, because those practices will be like right here, and there's some more of that right here. Before that, we're going to learn about using functions in templates and talk about the pluses and minuses of that. And we'll look at predefined global functions, and we'll look at modularizing our code and using nested templates. So that is what is coming up next.